I guess there's two. I think there's two quick answers to this. One is that I think that in relation to public funding, I quite like the word investment. I certainly don't like the word in relation to arts, which is subsidy, because I think that those companies that get public funding or public investment should have a mixed ecology. So they should be part, as this organisation is, which you're all sort of sitting in, a part of, is part public funded, part public invested, part earned income, and part private income. And it's that mixed ecology which feels an important economic balance to strike for organisations that get investment. As a wider, more general point, I would just quickly say that David Mickler, my colleague, was telling me about an article which some of you may have read in the newspaper at the weekend, describing the design team at Apple. Did anybody read that article? Yeah. Which described the fact that obviously lots of Apple's products are developed in terms of the technology in countries that aren't the UK. But that a massive majority of Apple's design team is British. And the reason for that is because this country has invested in culture and arts and education and the humanities over years. And that means that as a creative nation, we are respected around the world because of that. So I would just make that more general point in relation to funding, which is that when times become tight, obviously it seems like the arts and creativity and things that sort of maybe they just thrive on their own, seem like ripe for reduction in funding. But actually what makes us a complete world beater, and I would argue that Wandsworth as a creative borough with lots of individual organisations, is the fact that actually people come through lots of creative paths to get to the point where they start to make money for the country.
When we set up the company, or I joined the company and we began to really grow the company and focus on that, what was tricky for us was finding support for a small company and office space. I think I look around Wandsworth and I see some of those beautiful buildings that aren't being used right now, and I'd love to see those being used to support startups and small companies. Short-term leases are really important, and if people come to us all the time with startup ideas, and we're really excited and we can help them on the internet, we can't always help them in the real world with their actual bricks and mortar. And so we end up having to turf them out and say, with regards to that side of it, go and, try your luck with the private sector landlords, which can be great, but often they are being guided by solicitors who want extremely long lease agreements and everything else. I think if the council were able to use some of these funds to provide accessible short-term leases for young businesses, I think that would be really, really helpful. There are a lot of buildings that are going to get knocked down in a few years' time, so let's use them while they're there and then redevelop them into whatever they need to be.
Thank you.
I mean, I guess really the cuts are coming and they're going to come and it's going to be unpleasant. I kind of have a great belief that the more community involved we are, the better London gets. And I've only ever grown up in really tight little London communities. I've been very involved with the Lavender Hill Traders Association, and I don't know if any of you made the street party, which this year will now be our 4th year. And we've managed to grow that to 10,000 people having a great party on the street. And that's all done from all the independents and a handful of other companies getting involved. I hope that the cuts bring that out. I certainly think kind of customer-wise, people are more excited by companies with conscience and companies that are getting involved. And I think marketing through your local community is a good thing. So I'd hope that we're not just relying on huge corporates pumping out a new wing for different things and being forced to use that. I'd like to think that as an independent and as residents that we're willing to get that bit more involved to pick it up.
So get engaged. And
just being involved. I think
Yeah.
it's the most exciting days I've had. I've been walking through the street parties where you just see so many people and everyone says almost the same thing. I see 10,000 Londoners smiling with a huge smile on their face. No one is worried about crime. No one's worried about their kids getting nicked. No one's worried about being mugged. Everyone's just wandering around with a huge smile on their face, just saying, this is fantastic. And that can be done on every single level by everybody, everywhere. And that's what I think, I'd hope, that now we've changed the G-spot away from greed and gain and gloss, and we're moving that to more like giving and greater advice and greater service. I'd really hope that that's something that we do manage to push out. So, maybe, as people, we need to step up a little bit, and independents, retailers, and residents need to bring their own involvement, their own inspiration, their own excitement, and be part of it. Because it's so much better. It's so exciting walking along those streets, watching everyone forget the hype that London is a terrifying place, that they're out to get us. It's wonderful.
I don't think anyone should receive public funds. I honestly think that the funds come from somewhere, and they come from the taxes, be it your parking fine or what else. In Westminster at the moment, David was right. We are a cultural centre in this country, and we've been exporting comedy. We are the centre of comedy in the world. Genuinely, a comedian. I could walk up to the Comedy Store in California, in Hollywood, and I'd be able to get a spot. Me being only in the industry a couple of years, we are a phenomenal powerhouse for comedy in this country. And in Westminster at the moment, what they have done in the past 6 months is they've banned flyering in Leicester Square, and it's killing comedy clubs. 3 have gone bust in the past month. So it's a really, really terrible thing. And that's just because they're enforcing certain aspect of the license, because one of the licensing officers doesn't like comedy and doesn't like the flyerers. And for me, the big issue that Wandsworth does to our advantage is it puts on these street parties. It makes it easy to be a creative business. We don't need funding, we just need the barriers to be removed. And if you can make it easy for anyone to do this stuff, you don't need the extra funding. It's amazing how little a comic can get by on. I shouldn't really be saying this, but but if you're in a creative industry, you are doing it principally because you love it. And yes, you want to get paid and you want to have cash and the rest of it, but it's removing the barriers that stop you from doing it. The third aspect of that is there is one area where funding would be useful, and that is I've only met a small fraction of any of you and even the guys on the panel tonight. I didn't know that you guys were here. No one else does either. Even here in Wandsworth, we don't know who everyone is. And yet, we have access with Clapham Junction to the whole of the south of England. I get people coming up from Brighton phoning me up saying they want to come to the comedy club. We have Clapham Junction. 6,000 people go through that every hour. If we can get the message out to the people that come through there, banner it. Get people onto the trains. Hand out flyers in rush hour. Bug the hell out of them. If you want to put funding in anywhere, let people know and drag them here by the hair.
Yeah, I agree exactly with what's been said, and really it's a question of, if they don't have any money, what can the council do to help us out? And especially with the Doodle Bar, what I've found is that although the economic development part of the council is behind us and sees the advantages, they don't necessarily talk to licensing or planning, and then you kind of find yourself walking into corners. And if everyone in the council could talk to each other and decide that they supported an idea and then all get together, it would save everyone a lot of time.
We're an organisation that hasn't received public funding. We are the smallest theatre ever to win an Olivier Award. And I'm only saying that, thank you. I'm only saying that because I would obviously favour putting the funding towards organisations who are doing it anyway and doing it well without the funding. And I think they should go to the top of the list, personally. But there we are. For my sector, I'd say it's about putting the money where the most engaging and fearless work is happening that's well managed and that has a clarity of vision.
Really quickly, obviously I'm going to say higher education.
Yes.
We are publicly funded. Our funding is being cut, not might be, is being. And going back to what David was saying, you'll still receive public funding if you're teaching science, technology, engineering and maths, the STEM subjects, but they won't fund teaching design and they won't fund teaching art. And Apple is a terrific example. Jonathan Ive, who's head of design at Apple working over in the States, studied design at Northumbria University. You know, these people aren't, the courses will be shut down because the universities won't run them. And on top of that, the students are obviously going to be, you know, will students still come and do an MA after they've paid £9,000 a year to do a BA? I didn't pay, and I got money to go to university, and probably a lot of people in this room are the same, and I think I'm quite surprised how quickly and shockingly it's changed.